All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast with your hosts, Chase Steffes and Derek Larger. And we've got an action packed show for you tonight. We have got a lot of topics to cover, going over some of the head coaching hires that got hired over the past week and a half, some coordinator positions that got filled and are expected to be filled here in the next couple days, maybe even the next week, and a breakdown of the games that happened last night. We now have our Super Bowl 57 teams, and it is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I also, later on in the show, before we end, will be going over my mock draft 1.0, going over every pick that I believe is going to be in the first round or some way, shape, or form. Now, we'll be doing multiple mock drafts, me and Derek, over the offseason, and we will go over our best candidates for different positions. But I do feel like it'll be a defensive heavy draft in the first round. We will go over that later. To get into our first topic, we will go over the NFC Championship game that happened yesterday, Derek, with the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, do you feel that this game was kind of a wash in terms of, like, we didn't get to see the true potential of the San Francisco 49ers with their quarterback injured, and didn't get to really see the whole playbook pan out because we had Christian McCaffrey in Wildcat for like the last half of the game because Josh Johnson went out and Brock Purdy couldn't throw the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it really did stink to watch that game because knowing that the 49ers pretty much lost their quarterback in the second or third drive of the game with pretty much a torn UCL in his throwing elbow. And, you're out on your fourth string quarterback at that point. And then, like you said, the fourth string quarterback gets a concussion, and then they're left with Christian McCaffrey as their quarterback. So it's like, they were doomed from the start because of the fact that their quarterback room has been decimated this year. And not really saying that I felt like that would have made a difference. The 49ers definitely could have made that a lot more of a game had their quarterback been healthy, but I still believe the Eagles would have won. But it is a bummer that Brock Purdy was not able to play for the majority of that game because it could have been a lot more interesting of a ball game if it was. But the Eagles knew that at that point nobody was throwing the ball deep, so they knew what to do. Stop Christian McCaffrey, and that's all you had to do to win the game.
Yeah, pretty much. Brock Purdy came in later in the game. He just couldn't throw. He was basically doing a lot of handoffs to CMC and just couldn't really get anything going on the incoming drives because yeah, you had Ayuk, you had George Kittle, you had Debo, but like when you can't throw the ball down the field, what are you supposed to do with weapons like that? The Niners came in with the number one defense overall in the whole league, and a 7-0 rookie who had not really played a high powered defense, but also this was his true test to see what he was made of, and he did not get the chance to show it because of the injury that he sustained. Now, first look, it looked like it wasn't that bad. He just got hit in the arm. Nobody thought anything of it. I didn't even think anything of it, but it turned out to be more severe than what it actually was. And it just goes to show you, Derek, that, playing in the NFL is so unpredictable at any point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is unpredictable, and it's unfortunate because, that storybook ending for the 49ers just never actually turned out to be. And it's really unfortunate. Even George Kittle was reminding people of that, saying that, how does it feel, that we didn't have a quarterback in this game? It says pretty shitty, not going to lie. I mean, I feel that 100%. I mean, like what else is there to say? And then, people were making fun of the 49ers and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, how can you people even attempt to talk crap about this team knowing they didn't even have a quarterback playing at the end of the game? Like, that's how decimated they've been all year at the quarterback position. They didn't even have a quarterback in the final game of the season. That's how decimated they were. So, the fact that anyone would talk crap about the 49ers and what they were able to do this year, and in that game specifically, is total nonsense. I know people were saying like, oh, they just look like they gave up. Well, you're getting blown out by 24 points in the fourth quarter, and you didn't have a quarterback. Who wouldn't have given up in that moment? I mean, seriously, what were they really fighting for? I mean, you knew for a fact that there was no way you were coming back in that game. So
yeah, and it's crazy because they did have Jimmy G active on the roster just in case there was an emergency quarterback needed, and they were thinking about putting him in the game, because with a game like this on the line, it's all or nothing, heading into the Super Bowl. But Kyle Shanahan did not want to risk further injury to Jimmy G and risk further complications with any other, person on this team. And, he ultimately decided not to put Jimmy G in, but they were talking about putting Jimmy G in to, give them a spark and possibly try to win the game. But, when it comes down to it, the breakdown of this game is, now that you got the Chiefs as your opponent, it's going to be difficult because every time that the Eagles have faced an elite quarterback this season, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't say Kyler Murray. Like, I'd say he's a tough opponent. I wouldn't say he's super elite, but it's all been in close one-score games. And like, with how good the Eagles defense is, they have not faced a Patrick Mahomes yet this season. And I feel like it's going to be a lot closer game and a lot closer than what people think because of how much of an escape artist he is, how much time he'll have to heal his ankle, and how much time Andy Reid will have to be able to scheme against that defense. So it's going to be a lot more interesting game than what people are letting on to be.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to say the least when these two teams play each other, because I mean, people had a lot of excuses, right, for why these two teams got to the spot that they're in. With the Eagles, we were talking about how, they really didn't deserve that. They got it because the 49ers just absolutely screwed themselves all throughout the game. And then, of course, people were talking about the Chiefs and how the refs bailed them out of every situation in that game and it's fixed and all this other stuff. Whatever. Clearly, these two teams were the two best teams in the NFL at any point this year. And now it's just, it truly does feel like the two best teams are going to be in the NFL Super Bowl this year. And it's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, it really irritates me when people say that NFL games are rigged. I mean, I've talked to one or two NFL players. I know that you've talked to a couple of them, and anybody that's played the game of football knows that it's, anything can happen. It's not really rigged. It's just the way that the officiating is. I think that, it's not more so rigged. It's more so the bad calls are ruining the game of football. Speaking of bad calls, there was a lot of controversy in the Bengals and Chiefs game, but there was also a little bit in the Niners and Eagles game. There was a lot of, going back and forth, a lot of holding, a lot of calls that were happening. The one that kind of puzzled me was why Kyle Shanahan did not challenge that play, because even Devontae Smith was up going like this, saying like, run the play, run the play. He knew that he didn't catch the ball, but yet Kyle Shanahan didn't do it. But ultimately, like, tempers were flaring in that game with the Niners and Eagles. Trent Williams got ejected for what he did to an Eagles player. And anybody that doesn't know, he grabbed one of the guys by the neck and just shoved him down to the ground because he was so irritated with the game. And then there was another player for the Niners that was just punching the ball and continued to hit it because he was frustrated, and he got a 15-yard penalty from that. So not only losing your quarterback, but having your temper get the best of you and causing more damage than good, Derek, is a very bad thing for the very bad look for the 49ers in that aspect.
Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it was hilarious watching Trent Williams just absolutely body whoever that was. I don't remember, but that's a grown man right there. Would not let go, and he just said, "Psych," and just threw his body, slammed his ass down to the ground, bro. That was sick. That was hilarious because that's one of the best left tackles to ever play the game of football. You do not want to mess with that guy. Believe me, you do not want to mess with any of those guys. So
definitely don't. It's crazy. Moving on to the Bengals and Chiefs game. Now, Derek, this is where we had a lot more controversial calls in this game. Obviously, there was like a couple roughing the passer penalties that people didn't like that the Chiefs were getting on Joe Burrow. They had that one with Eli Apple where they called a PI on him and everything, and you saw him grabbing jersey. I don't know why people were complaining about that one. They were complaining about that roughing the passer penalty at the end. And just that intentional grounding call was the one that was very controversial for everybody, because it's just like Joe Burrow had a wide receiver in the area. Why is it an intentional grounding for him when Patrick Mahomes did the same thing? Well, Mahomes had Kelsey right there in front of him, and he was in the area of where the ball was being thrown. And Joe Burrow had nobody. Like, the nearest receiver was about 7 or 8 yards down the field. And Samaje Perine was like closer to the sidelines rather than in the area where he threw the ball. So there was nobody in that area other than a offensive lineman. So that's the reason why the intentional grounding call was called for the Bengals. But this is why a lot of people think the NFL is rigged, because they wanted to see the Kelsey brothers. They wanted to see the Andy Reid Bowl. They wanted to see the best quarterback in the league face one of the best defenses in the league and see if he can come out on top. It's stupid in my opinion. I think that people are upset that the Bengals lost, and they're trying to find a way to blame the loss on not themselves, because not only did Joe Burrow throw 2 interceptions and everything, but the Bengals beat themselves with some of the stupid penalties that they actually did get in that game. So
yeah. Well, I think the problem that a lot of Bengals fans had yesterday was not the calls that were made. I think it's a lot of the calls that weren't made in this game. You mentioned how there were a couple of late hits on Joe Burrow in this game that didn't get called, but Mahomes got them. There was that last drive for the Chiefs, that punt that the Bengals had on them, that their gunner on the left side was blatantly blocked in the back and was not called. There was a hold on the last play of the game. There were 2 or 3 holds at the same time on the same play, but weren't called. So again, it wasn't the calls that were made that I think a lot of people are pissed about. I think it's more of the non-calls that made a lot of people angry at the fact that nothing was called. And again, this is a problem. And Chase, I feel like we say this every year now, that when it gets into the playoffs, these star officiating crews can't get it right. Like, they keep boasting about these great crews that are brought in for these big games, and like these guys that have 20, 30 years in the league and they know what they're doing, when clearly they don't. Clearly they don't. Their crews don't know what's going on. They miss calls that should be there, and they call things that aren't there. So that's the problem. Is this has got to be something that the NFL has to address. It has to get better. I understand that we as fans, I think, and especially like I would understand if I was a Bengals fan in that situation, I'd be pissed. But I mean, just as a fan of the game itself, like, listen, if you're not going to call flags all game or on specific people, then don't call them all game. Like, if you're just going to let the guys just manhandle each other at all times, then do it on both sides. Don't call flags. Or if you're going to call 30 flags in the game, set a career high in flags, make sure you're consistent with it. Everyone gets screwed. That's how it should be. But again, when we're talking about this game, though, as much as we want to talk about it being rigged, which is really stupid, I don't think that's true. At the end of the day, I mean, when it came to the Bengals, they had every opportunity to win this game and they didn't. The Bengals had the ball 3 times in the fourth quarter with the game tied at 20 apiece and didn't score. Like, and not to mention the majority of the Kansas City secondary was out for this game.
And so
And the
was
fact
their
that
star
Joe
wide
Burrow
receiver.
and company could not exploit that is scary.
And the fact that the Bengals defense couldn't stop their third, fourth, and fifth string wide receivers, there was no Juju, there was no Kadarius Toney, and there was no Mecole Hardman. Kadarius Toney hurt his hamstrings halfway through the game. Mecole Hardman had an oblique injury, and Juju was out with a knee injury from the start of the game. You know, and then you had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, and a couple others. You're talking about a fourth string wide receiver, a rookie, and a couple others that are on the practice squad, and your Bengals secondary could not stop them. Now, come on.
Oh, 100%. And it's pretty funny because the funny thing is like we saw the boasting, of all the Chiefs players, right? And Chiefs fans after the game, because Cincinnati did a lot of talking, dude. Not only their fans, but their city did and their players did.
Their mayor did.
You in Burrowhead Stadium, calling what a specific day like Burrowhead Day, the mayor of Cincinnati doing that. Bro, y'all talked a lot of ish just to get smacked in the mouth, and you deserve this. You deserve to get called out on your bullshit. I mean,
the Chiefs deserve to talk. The Chiefs do.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Absolutely. Especially since, we know that, up until yesterday, the Chiefs hadn't beaten the Cincinnati Bengals while Joe Burrow was there. So, I mean, it's one of those situations. They started talking and they got smacked in the mouth, and they deserve to get trashed for it. I mean, listen, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, though, before we go on with anything else. We got to talk about the elephant in the room, and that last roughing the passer that was called, or unnecessary roughness against Patrick Mahomes in that thing. Now, before we get, but yes or no, Chase, do you believe that was the correct call?
Yes, 100%. Because if you slow down the film and everything, you could see that both of his feet are out of bounds in the white. And there's been several people on TikTok that have broken down this play and done it frame by frame in slow motion, that both of his feet were out of bounds when he got pushed by Joseph Osai, and everybody was pissed about that call. That was a clear and obvious right call to make.
Yeah, it was clearly the correct call. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I tweeted about it. I'm like, wow, he just cost him the game. That sucked, and I feel bad for Asai because, like the fact that your season all came down to that one play, and obviously he didn't mean to do it, but you know how it is when you're playing football and adrenaline's getting you. Sometimes you just make boneheaded decisions. And that sucks. I mean, it sucks that, he's going to have to live with that for, the rest of his life. He's going to have to live with that. And it's going to keep them away from a Super Bowl. That really sucks for a player like that. And, and the weird thing is Chase, I mean, I'm sure you saw on social media and everything, there were certain players on the Bengals who were supporting him and being a helping hand. And then there were some teammates that were very vocal and adamant on reminding Asai how much he screwed up. Obviously you hope that those teammates, find a better way to, be a better teammate, or they may be finding a different destination this next year. But I mean, for the majority of the part, the most of the guys were there. Zach Taylor mentioned afterwards, we're not going to, base this game on one play, because obviously And that's the truth, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if the Bengals didn't want the game to come down to one last boneheaded decision, then they should have played better. And they had every opportunity to, and they didn't.
Yeah, you can't really blame that loss on Osai. I mean, you had Joe Burrow threw 2 picks in that game in crucial moments of the game, like one right before halftime, and then the other one like in the fourth quarter. Like you got 2 moments where it's crucial timing for you to, go down and score, and you didn't do it. So like if anybody is to blame, it's the entire team and not just Osai. Yeah, Osai was a victim of one of the last components of the game, but and that contributed to their win. But like you can't blame that whole loss on just Osai. It was Joe Burrow and several others that were a part of it as well.
Absolutely. All
All
right.
right.
Well,
So now
coaches.
that we go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You go. You go.
I was gonna say, now that we've gone ahead and done the breakdown of the games, we've got some coordinator hirings for this offseason. And so far we have Vic Fangio has been hired in as the Dolphins defensive coordinator. They are just trying to work out a deal long-term to figure out how much he is going to make. According to him, they have not had a deal done yet. We are still waiting to see who the offensive coordinator is going to be for the Baltimore Ravens. The offensive coordinator for the Rams was hired as Mike LaFleur, and the Jets hired Nathaniel Hackett, a former Denver Broncos head coach and former offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, which makes me wonder, are the Jets going to be the front runners to try to get Aaron Rodgers, because they are willing to meet the asking price that the Packers are offering? So it'll be very interesting to see. And now recently today, Kellen Moore was mutually parted ways with the Dallas Cowboys and has now reached an agreement to be the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. Derek, what is your thoughts on this hire?
Well, it's insanely crazy that, in a span of 24 hours, Kellen Moore got a brand new job and a much better job at that. I mean, think of, he's upgrading at quarterback. He's upgrading at weapons. He's upgrading at, maybe offensive line as well. Just a great situation for Kellen Moore, going into a situation where he has probably a top 5 quarterback in the league. And we saw what he was able to do with this Cowboys offense this year, outside of the divisional round against the 49ers. I mean, that Cowboys offense was the 3rd best offense throughout the entire regular season. So what he was able to do with that offense, I mean, it just goes to show you what can he do with an improved offense from that perspective. I mean, it was a great hire by the Chargers. I mean, they couldn't have gotten better at the OC position than Kellen Moore right now. So, and a astounding move. And that might be the move, Chase, that potentially catapults the Chargers into the spot that they want to be in contention for Super Bowls now.
I still don't know for sure, because, question still remains on Brandon Staley, whether or not he can be the guy that, leads them to the next level. But I do think that this offense is going to be running a lot better and a lot smoother now with Kellen Moore. A lot of people forget that Kellen Moore did play the quarterback position for a while in the NFL before he became the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys. And I just think that Dak has been so inconsistent at the quarterback position that he's going to be getting a massive upgrade. Like Kellen Moore is going to be getting a massive upgrade at quarterback with Justin Herbert, and with this Chargers offense, he's going to be able to do so much, open up the passing game for Justin Herbert, open up the playbook. So we'll get to see what he's capable of. They still need to hire a quarterback coach for Justin Herbert just to, develop him more along the way. And I do believe that this is Brandon Staley's last hurrah. If getting Kellen Moore in here, getting a new quarterback in here, quarterback coach in here, and then either not making the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round this next year, I do believe Staley's gone, and I do believe that Kellen Moore might be elevated to head coach, if not somebody else. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes this offseason.
Yep, absolutely.
You'll see later on in my mock draft who I've got the Chargers picking. It's going to be very interesting, Alex. And you'll also like the Lions picks that I've got. But Derek, I'll let you take over from here talking about the next three topics because you've been well versed in the head coaching hires because obviously your team is looking for a candidate as well. So I'll let you go ahead and start off with who the Panthers have hired as their head coach.
Yeah, that was the first big news. Was the first head coach hiring was a name that we did not expect, and the Panthers are going with former Indianapolis Colts head coach Frank Reich. He is now going to be their head coach. This move is leading to Steve Wilkes filing a suit against the Carolina Panthers. Don't know what he expects for them to do. And despite of it, again, they gave him a second interview. They gave him a listen, but they wanted to go a different direction. It seems like Steve Wilkes is just being a little salty about it, but at the end of the day, I'm here for any Lions content. Yeah. But yeah, Frank Reich is now going to be the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, Chase. I mean, what do you make of the Frank Reich to the Panthers move? I know you and I kind of went back and forth, and you said that, I didn't realize why they would have made this move. Has your mind been changed at all? Or are you still sticking with that?
At the moment, I'm still sticking with it. I want to see obviously what the Panthers do with their quarterback position because I feel like that's going to be a big key factor in this because we saw what Frank Reich was able to do in his first year with Indy, obviously with having Andrew Luck as the quarterback. He had a lot of success. And then the following year with Phillip Rivers had success as well, went to the playoffs, damn near beat the Buffalo Bills going on to the divisional round, but lost by 3 points to a talented Bills team and a great Colts defense that was playing their heart out that year. And we've seen a lot of good things from Frank Reich. I think that the downfall for the Colts is not having consistency at the quarterback play. And ultimately, they were looking for a scapegoat. And I think that that's what the Colts were doing with Frank Reich. And my opinion has still, not changed on him. I still don't like the hire. But for the Panthers, I want to see what they do with that quarterback position, whether it be Will Levis, whether it be, going out and trying to get Derek Carr, or whether it be any other good veteran. Like if they're going to try to make a push for Lamar Jackson and bring him to Carolina, I don't know what it may be, but my opinion is susceptible to change, but we'll have to wait and see because, I saw enough of him in Indy, at least on the outside looking in, not as a Colts fan, because you are, that, I'm not too fond of this move, but obviously, they really like him. So we'll have to wait and see what he can do.
Yeah. The one thing I've always liked and admired about Frank Reich is when he brings in a new quarterback, majority of the time, that quarterback almost always has a career year after that. And like you said, it was tough for Frank Reich because his first year, he had to have Jacoby Brissett because Andrew Luck was hurt. His second year, had Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck had statistically the best year of his career, was comeback player of the year, was widely renowned as a top 3 quarterback in all of the NFL. Things were looking bright for the Colts. Then you have to go back to Jacoby Brissett. Then you go to Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has his most efficient year of his career, of his 17, 18-year career. And he does that with Indianapolis. Brings in Carson Wentz, one of his most efficient years of his entire career, even though it ended terribly. And then obviously this year, he brought in another new quarterback, and Matt Ryan was just utter dirt. So at the end of the day, you're right. I think that the problem was Frank Reich was made to be a scapegoat for all of this. Even though clearly they haven't gotten a new quarterback. They've gotten a new quarterback every year that Frank Reich has been the head coach there. Feel really bad for him. I hope that the Carolina Panthers can get a quarterback that in the draft or in free agency that they can build on for several years and allow Frank Reich to kind of mold that quarterback into what he wants him to be. We'll just have to see, I mean, Frank Reich is a great mentor. He's a smart guy. He is trustworthy to a fault at times, because he's a player's coach. So sometimes he doesn't always get the best out of his players from time to time, but he is definitely a great mentor of the game, and he definitely knows how to call plays. Just at the end of the day, we'll see if Carolina puts him in a better situation going forward. Let's go to another one that's almost a surefire thing from what we're told, and that is Houston getting its next head coach, and all signs point towards DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers defensive coordinator, getting the job. He's supposed to be interviewing, I believe, tomorrow, and they said that if all is well and goes well, they said that it could be possible that he would have a deal done by Wednesday at the very latest. So what do you say, Chase? I mean, does it seem like the Ryans to Houston thing's almost a sure deal at this point?
Almost. I mean, I was watching the NFL Network today, and Ian Rappaport, who is by far a much better source of football content and information than Adam Schefter is, and he was talking that Houston really likes DeMeco Ryans, really likes what he's offering and what he brings to the table. Obviously, DeMeco's wife is from Houston and everything, and she would love to go back to there, but they like what he brings, and the way that he was a linebacker in this league, and the way that he's gotten players to rally around him and stuff like that. And they said that, or he said, more than likely, barring any other candidate blowing them away, DeMeco Ryans will probably leave tomorrow with a deal struck if they really like him that much. And more power to DeMeco Ryans being able to nice. More power to DeMeco Ryans being able to come in, because he knows he's going to have job security. He knows that the Texans are in rebuild mode, but not only that, he's got a chance to get any defensive players that he wants. Try to build that defense from the ground up, and 14 picks to work with in this draft, and it's unbelievable, And the Texans could obviously get more picks, but the first thing, he's got to hire a great offensive coordinator. He's got to hire a great quarterback coach, because they're going to choose whatever quarterback that they feel is necessary if the Bears don't trade away their first pick. They're going to choose between Stroud, Levis, or Young. All signs are pointing to Bryce Young going to Houston, and obviously having DeMeco Ryans in that division with the Colts and the up-and-coming Jaguars, Derek, the AFC South could be in contention for one of the best divisions in football if we can get the Colts and the Texans switched around to being, winners in this league.
Yeah, and obviously from the standpoint of JJ Watt posted a photo today of him actually playing with DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans is actually a former Houston Texan where he played for 5 seasons. So, all signs just, it makes all the sense in the world to go back to Houston and, try to make the franchise better than what he left it. So
you'll have a Dan Campbell situation, because when he played for the Lions, he wants to go back to the Lions.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Texans play from that point forward, man. I tell you, I mean, DeMeco Ryans was one of my top 3 guys that I really wanted this offseason. I think very highly of him. I think he fits perfectly with the Houston culture that they have. I think he's going to fit right in. I would, if assuming he gets the job, which I assume here in the next 24 to 36 hours, we're probably going to end up hearing. So
I know
that'll be interesting.
it's going to be very interesting. And Alex, since you were in here listening, congratulations on having Ben Johnson come back for another year as the offensive coordinator. He was the top candidate for everybody as a head coaching position, and he decided to turn down all of the offers this offseason to go back to the Lions because he believes that they are building something special, and that offense runs through Ben Johnson. So congrats on being able to keep him. And, you might lose him next year, but you enjoy the time that you got with him because he will be a great head coaching candidate next year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And the last two two other teams that we can talk about when it comes to head coaching candidates. As it is right now, the Cardinals and the Colts have made some moves here these last few days. The Colts have two more interviews lined up this week. They have Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, and Brian Callahan, both expected to have interviews this week. It's actually being reported, Chase, that the Colts are actually flying to Philadelphia to interview Shane Steichen personally. So very interesting there. I would assume that this is probably due to the fact that Shane Steichen is, currently working on the Super Bowl, and they probably just said that we would be okay with flying to Philadelphia to do the interview there in Philly so that they don't take him away from being in Philly for more than a day. So that probably makes a little bit more sense thinking about it that way. But of course, Brian Callahan of the Bengals is also going to have a chance to have an interview. From what I heard, it could be Wednesday. And from what it sounds like is the Cardinals also are planning to interview Brian Callahan on Thursday and could also be interviewing the Bengals defensive coordinator as well later in the week. We will just have to see, Chase. I mean, for when it comes to the Colts, I mean, I don't know about Callahan, man. I think a lot of Colts fans really want Callahan in the building. A lot of them do. I know I tweeted that if the Colts get an interview with Callahan before they do with the Arizona Cardinals, they should not let him leave the building without extending him an offer.
Wouldn't that be some shit? Like Callahan goes to the Cardinals, Steichen goes to the Broncos.
Nah, I don't even think Steichen's even gotten an interview I don't even think he's gotten an interview with the Broncos.
He has.
I don't even know who's even interested, with the Broncos anymore. We've heard D'Amico Ryans was in the mix. That clearly doesn't sound like that's going anywhere. They tried to get Jim Harbaugh. It's just not working there. Sean Payton don't want to go there. At the end of the day, I don't know who they're going to get as their next head coach, but for the Colts and the Cardinals, I mean, who do you think they both end up getting here, Chase?
I ultimately think the Colts are going to get Brian Callahan. I mean, he has run one of the most prolific offenses with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, and with the way that they have been able to push the ball down the field, with the way that they've been able to score points, I think that, that is exactly what an up-and-coming quarterback needs from an offensive-minded guy and an offensive coordinator. And I think that Brian Callahan is in a good position for that. Shane Steichen is not a bad option either, but I just think that Brian Callahan fits the mold of what the Colts are looking for. And honestly, if I was a GM, he would have been probably my sixth or seventh guy that I would have interviewed. He probably would have jumped my list into the top 5 because I would have had 10 candidates that I would have interviewed. I would have knocked it down to 5, and then I would have conducted a second round of interviews with those 5 people, and then pick from that category there. And, Steichen was on my list of top 5 to begin with, and then Brian Callahan jumped in my list of my top 6 and 7 later on in the season. Now I think he's probably in my top 4, top 3 coaching candidates, with Sean Payton still being available and potentially being able to go for the Cardinals, because they're the only ones that are probably willing to meet the asking price. But I don't know if the Saints want to trade to an NFC team. That's the thing.
Right. All right. Well, it is time for the Chase mock draft 1.0. I gotta say, folks, he showed me the all of this before coming on here, and must say I love that number 1 pick, Chase. Love it.
All right, Alex. So be prepared. I'm going to pull it up on the screen for you because I know that you are going to be excited on some of the picks that are for the Detroit Lions. So bear with me here. All right. Can you see the screen, Derek?
I don't see.
You don't see. All right.
Present and share screen.
I am presenting and I am sharing screen, but why is it not letting me? That is the question. System preferences. No.
I don't know what you did last time.
I don't know either. That's the one big major question, because I had the screen shared last time and maybe I should have just left it up, but let me see.
Make sure it's the right monitor that you're trying to share. There we go. Now
There we go. All right. So while y'all are in here, I will go ahead and explain the reason why I've got a lot of these picks, including for you, Alex, why I've got the Lions picking who they are. So obviously, I've got a trade happening with the Indianapolis Colts and the Chicago Bears. I think that the Colts desperately need a quarterback badly. I think that, they have done already seen everything that they want from all the veteran quarterbacks. I think that it's time for them to actually start fresh and go with a young blood in there and build it from the ground up, because it's not working with a lot of the veteran guys that they got. And this quarterback draft is thin but talented, to say the least, especially with some guys that have a lot of potential for their ceilings. But, with the Colts, there's a lot of guys that could trade up to that, number 1 spot, that number 3 spot, get ahead of them to pick the quarterback that, they may seem fit. And obviously, if they're picking at number 1, they've got their choice between CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson, if they even, deem him worthy of a first round pick. And I just think trading up to number 1, it gives them that choice rather than, somebody trading up ahead of them and, having Will Levis fall to them. And if he's not really the top option, then they're screwed. So I got them trading to the first overall pick with the Chicago Bears picking CJ Stroud. And then the second choice, I obviously feel like the Houston Texans are going to go with Bryce Young. They obviously need a quarterback as well. That is the one major thing that they are missing in their system, and to start fresh. And I think that it's a no-brainer that they're going quarterback as well. A lot of people had Jalen Carter going to the Arizona Cardinals, but I think Will Anderson is probably the best defensive prospect in this draft. Jalen Carter is no slouch either, but I think that with J.J. Watt retiring, Chandler Jones now on the Raiders, the Arizona Cardinals need to start fresh at that edge position, and getting a young guy on a rookie contract and Will Anderson would be a phenomenal fit for them. And then the Chicago Bears pick up the slack and get they get a couple picks from the Colts, and obviously a first rounder for next year, maybe another first rounder the year after that, but and also maybe a third rounder or a fourth rounder for this year as well. But with that 4th overall pick, they pick up Jalen Carter, a guy to help beef up the defensive line. Now, obviously, they need O-line, they need wide receivers, and if they've got another second round pick or another third round pick, they can use that to trade back into the first round to pick up some star-studded guy that they believe is the right fit. I got the Seahawks choosing Tyree Wilson. With a lot of the way that things are, they're trying to rebuild the Legion of Boom and rebuild, who they believe is going to be the next future for the Seattle Seahawks. And their offense didn't look too bad. Tyreek Woolen played really, really well. And if it wasn't for Sauce Gardner and Aiden Hutchinson, I feel like Tyreek Woolen would have won Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jamal Adams is going to be coming back stronger than ever in that secondary. They are trying to build that defense up. I think that Tyree Wilson will be a good option at edge for them. Alex, here's where the Lions take a shot, and they choose Brian Brazee, the defensive tackle from Clemson. Now, I chose a defensive tackle rather than a defensive end right here. They could have chose Myles Murphy. I chose a defensive tackle because with every great defensive end, there's always a great defensive tackle in the line with them. Obviously, having somebody off the edge is great, but you need to be able to have that interior guy to be able to push the guys back into the quarterback and have the quarterback run outside the pocket and get flustered to move toward Aiden Hutchinson's direction. Obviously, if you have a guy off the edge and nobody up the middle, it's more likely for the quarterback to step up into the pocket and make it harder for the edge rusher, your talented edge rusher, to get after him. So I think that guy up the middle is a great choice to pick there. The Raiders, I feel that they're going to go make a strong push for Aaron Rodgers, maybe make a push for Tom Brady and everything. I don't see them choosing a quarterback here, even though a lot of the analysts do. They were like 30th in defense this year, Derek, and their defense is decimated. They have really no talent outside of Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. They need to build up that secondary. I think Joey Porter Jr., corner out of Penn State, is a great choice here. And then going to the Falcons, Myles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson, is a good choice here. I can't even name anybody on the defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that is possibly the best option that you've got for not buying any of their rumors. The Seahawks want to draft, then sit rookie QB behind Gino with the fifth pick. Who is that?
Who are you talking about?
The guy that says I am Parker.
Whoever it is probably isn't a well-known source.
I don't know. But yeah, I agree, Alex. Him with Aiden Hutchinson would definitely be scary, but you just wait until to see who I got picked later. Derek, what are your thoughts on the picks so far that I've got that I've already discussed?
Well, I agreed with your top four. I don't know about how I feel about Breeze and all these other ones from before, but the Raiders one will be interesting because they do need a new quarterback, because it doesn't sound like Derek Carr is coming back. They're going to need to get one in free agency, or they're going to need to draft one. So if they don't get one in free agency, then we don't know what's going to happen. Miles, I do like Joey Porter being in the top 10 because I think his intangibles is what's going to keep him relevant in the top 10. He has the longest arm span of any corner that's ever come into the NFL ever. So that's going to be a very interesting aspect. And then Myles Murphy dropping to 8, insane. I wouldn't expect him to drop that much, but we'll see. Will Levis to the Panthers, I totally agree with.
Hang on, I haven't gotten there yet, but I'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Myles Murphy one, it's very questionable. But like I said, the draft is so unpredictable. We have seen such talented players fall to astronomical positions. We've seen CeeDee Lamb fall 18th to the Cowboys. We've seen Calvin Ridley go 17th to the Falcons. We've seen Justin Jefferson fall 21st to the Minnesota Vikings. So we've seen talented players, that were projected top 10 picks fall. And we've seen guys like Cleveland Ferrell get picked 4th overall by the Raiders and everything. So like it's very, very unpredictable with the way that the draft goes. People pick different positions or value different positions more each and every year. I just think that Myles Murphy is going to fall a little bit. And I think that the Falcons are going to pick him up and, going to love exactly what they're doing. And, that's why you don't see JSN in here right now. Cause I'm hearing tons and tons of chatter of him just being a very talented slot wide receiver. And with him not being, playing very many games in Ohio State this year, I think his stock has dropped slightly, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But yes, the Panthers picking Will Levis, it's a no-brainer. The Panthers need a quarterback. I don't think that they're going to go after anybody in free agency. I don't think that the Frank Reich is going to want to make that mistake again, going after veteran guys. And I think that the Panthers are going to want to start fresh. So getting Will Levis, a talented QB with a strong arm, good built body, it's going to be a great choice for the Carolina Panthers. The Philadelphia Eagles have no weakness on their roster. I think that the only weakness that they're going to have is they're going to be losing Miles Sanders this year, and they're also their offensive line is just getting old. It's getting old, and I think that Peter Skoronski is going to be a phenomenal pick to pick right here. Andre Dillard got injured this year, so I feel like he'll be the left tackle, but I feel like Peter Skoronski tuning in at that right tackle position is going to be great. Now, if they bring back Jason Kelsey, that's going to be a big question mark for them. Now, moving on to the next pick, I really wanted to pick JSN right here in 11 or 12, but like I said, I think a lot of people value with the way that I've been hearing a lot of things, and I spoke to somebody that I know really well, Derek, and there's a lot of chatter that JSN is going to drop. So a lot of people are going to view Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison as the top two wide receivers in this draft right now because of the way that Quentin Johnston's body type is and how he is 6'4", I think a 207-pound guy, and ability to run like a 4.4 or a 4.3. It's going to be insane. The Titans are going to need that big guy, that explosive guy, now that they got rid of A.J. Brown. And Jordan Addison giving another weapon to Bryce Young, a talented wide receiver that's got great contested catch ability and able to, run routes like it's no other. I think that is two perfect picks for the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans. What are your picks from 9 through 12, or your thoughts on the picks from 9 through 12 so far?
Well, I love the Will Levis one. I think that's what Carolina is going to do. They're going to go find a quarterback. And if my understanding is correctly, I think Frank Reich would love to have the opportunity to have Will Levis. Peter Skoronski at tackle makes a lot of sense for the Eagles. Skoronski, who also has flexibility at a bunch of different positions. So that's a good thing to have as an offensive lineman nowadays. I'm going to just say this, Chase, I will disagree with you on JSN not being the first wide receiver taken. I agreed with you in the sense that some might view him more as a slot guy than a guy that can play on the outside. No question that Johnston is a bigger wide receiver than JSN, and no question Addison is a faster wide receiver than JSN. But I just want to remind you that, again, the two Ohio State wide receivers who were drafted this year in the first round, the first and second guy drafted, or third guy drafted technically, guys who were in the running for offensive rookie of the year, and the first two teammates ever to go into the NFL as rookies and get 1,000 yards receiving, both of them said that Jackson Smith-Njigba is easily the better wide receiver than both of them. Does not matter that he did not play all this year. Go rewatch the tape. Jackson Smith-Njigba had potentially the greatest 6-game stretch that I have ever seen from a wide receiver. Ever. It might not, there probably won't be one better. He was averaging 10 catches a game, Chase, for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns a game. Averaging. I mean, in the Rose Bowl, the man caught 14 catches for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's insane. You don't see people put numbers like that up. You just don't do that, especially in the biggest game of the year. I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba, if it wasn't for the fact that he got injured, there would be no question mark. Jackson Smith-Njigba would be the number one, and there is no question. He's healthy now. He will be, at least when, the combine comes around and pro days are going to come around. The reports were that he was healthy for the big game for Ohio State against Georgia, but chose not to play. I mean, at the end of the day, I wouldn't even blame him if that were true.
If he would have, we probably would have had a better chance to win, but yeah.
True, but it is what it is. And honestly, I feel like if he was actually 100% ready, then I think he would have played. But either way, Jackson Smith-Njigba to me is a surefire thing. I mean, what you have been seeing out of Ohio State recently of wide receivers coming into the NFL, Ohio State wide receivers have been lighting up the league over the last several years. And I mean, again, no disrespect to Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnson. I think both these guys are going to get first round draft picks. I mean, no question about it. But I believe Jackson Smith-Njigba, no matter the team, is going to get taken number one.
Now, I have said this. I have said this time and time again, Derek, and I do believe that Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best wide receiver in this draft class. I do believe that he is a star-studded talent, and you just have not seen a wide receiver get picked very high other than Jamar Chase. I mean, go back in the past few drafts of all of the talented wide receivers that we've seen come out in this draft. CeeDee Lamb picked 18th. Calvin Ridley picked 17th. Justin Jefferson picked 22nd. Or 21st, 22nd. Freaking Terry McLaurin picked 52nd. AJ Brown picked 46th.
Okay, well, in retrospect, Terry McLaurin was not doing what Jackson Smith-Njigba was doing in 2021.
No, but the point being is all of these talented guys. Michael Thomas picked 25th.
I know, but Garrett Wilson was what? Garrett Wilson was 10th. Garrett Wilson was 10th and Chris Olave was what, 14th? So, it's not illogical. Like, I'm not even suggesting, I don't disagree with you that a top 10 pick is where Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to end up, because I don't know if really any of these teams in the top 10 truly need one. But like you said, when it comes to the Texans and the Titans again, I just think that they would be stupid to not go with Njigba with the first one.
I would totally agree. And like I said, this is 1.0 for me because, I do feel like after we see the pro days, after we see the combine and everything, we see the workouts, I do feel like he's going to go higher, and I will put him higher on my board. But as of what I'm hearing right now, coming from a lot of different people, they value him as a slot wide receiver and not the true outside guy that they are, anticipating. And like I said, they are stupid not to pick him and to pass up on him. But Alex, I do agree. JSN is probably one of the most polished receivers in the draft. And I do think that the best one next year will be Marvin Harrison Jr. And whoever he goes to, they are getting a top talent. But let's move on to to my next few picks. And yes, I do think that JSN will be picked as one of the first wide receivers taken. I think that he would be stupid not to be, but at this moment in time, with the way that things line up, I don't think he is. Now, like I said, it will change, but we'll see. The 13th pick going to the Jets, I've got them choosing Paris Johnson. I think that they are going to move on from Mekhi Becton. He's just been too injury prone. A guy that big at 365, 370 pounds. He's not staying healthy, and I think that they want to be able to have a stability on the O-line, somebody to protect their quarterback, whoever comes in, and I do feel like it might be Aaron Rodgers. This pick will go to Green Bay if they decide to trade it away to Green Bay. So getting that offensive lineman, they might have to run it back with Mekhi Becton or go get somebody else in free agency to be at that left tackle spot. But Paris Johnson, I feel like, would be a great spot on the O-line for him. Broderick Jones, the tackle from Georgia, I do feel like would be a great pick for the Bill Belichick system. He does not draft offensive talent in the first round. Last offensive talented guy that he drafted was N'Keal Harry, and we saw how that worked out for them. So I do think that he's going to get somebody to protect Mac Jones. And now that they've got Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. He's probably going to open up the playbook, and you're going to need a lot of protection for Mac Jones. The Packers are going to continue with their trend of not getting wide receiver or offensive talent in the first round, especially if they're going to move on from Aaron Rodgers, which that's what the rumors are that we're hearing. Jordan Love's going to be the guy starting, and I think with Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and all the other guys that they have on that team, I think that they're going to go defense. They don't have a true safety. I think Brian Branch is probably the best safety in this draft. Maybe a couple others. I'd have to relook at the safeties. I can't remember who else that they got, but Brian Branch is probably the most talented one. The Commanders need secondary help badly. Safety and corners. I think that Christian Gonzalez is a candidate for them to choose right here. Obviously, I think they liked what they seen with Sam Howell at that last game of the season, so they might run it with him next year and see what he's capable of. And if not, then they might make a push for Caleb Williams or Drake May or Spencer Rattler next year if he ends up panning out. We got 3 straight corners going here. I think Cam Smith is going to be a good pick for the Steelers. They need a true corner. Obviously, in that secondary, they got Minka Fitzpatrick. They've got a good defensive line with Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, and TJ Watt. You just look at their corners. They really got nobody that stands out and nobody that's a threat. So I think Cam Smith would be a good pick for them here. And Alex, I've got Devin Witherspoon, who has been rising on a lot of people's draft boards and has been a top candidate for possibly the first corner taken off the board in this draft class. Pairing him with Jeff Okudah, and Carl Joseph has done a fantastic job at safety this year. You use your first pick to get I said a quarterback. I still think that there's a possibility that they could go with the quarterback, maybe Will Levis or somebody like that. There's a chance. And I know that, we've seen all that we can with Jared Goff and seen the ceiling, but I think that they're more than likely going to go defense. Brian Bresee on the defensive line, Devin Witherspoon in the secondary will be a lethal force. And the next pick, the Bucs going with Osiris Torrance, interior O-line. I know that their center is going to be moving on to free agency this offseason. There's a lot of other guys that are retiring or possibly going to leave the team since Tom Brady's not coming back, and they're going to need to be able to build that O-line for whatever quarterback takes over playing for the Bucs. Derek, your thoughts on these next few picks here?
Man, you're going offensive line and secondary, man. Crazy.
Yes.
But yeah, Paris Johnson Jr., after Skoronski, Paris Johnson is clearly the second best offensive lineman coming out of this draft, so that makes total sense. Broderick Jones makes sense for Georgia. Some people even are suggesting he might jump to maybe number 1 when it comes to offensive linemen, because again, you look at him throughout his entire, all of last season, he did not allow a single sack. So, again, fantastic player. Brian Branch at safety for Alabama. That makes some sense. Just, I guess it depends on what kind of quarterback they have going into it and where other guys go before that. But anyway, but like you said, 3 corners right after that. It's insane. I would have said Witherspoon would have been the number 1 guy before the other 2. But I can't really complain too much about where these guys would go. If it were me personally, I think the Steelers might go wide receiver. Maybe if Addison, Jefferson or Johnson and Jigba are not there, I think they're gonna go with one of those. That'd be my guess. And Cyrus Torrance definitely is an interesting one because I've seen people have him graded at that spot, and then I've seen people grade him into the second round. I just wonder if it becomes a demand of a need rather than a want. You know how it is with the Buccaneers right now. They need that extra help on the interior, so that does make a lot of sense.
Alex, what do you think of the picks so far? Leave a comment, let me know. So we'll move on to the 20th pick all the way up to the 26th pick. We've got Nolan Smith. Obviously, he tore his ACL, so we didn't really get to see him in the Georgia final. And I do think that the Seahawks need edge rushers. We've seen edge rushers and defensive linemen go in the first round, or even early in the second round, even after they've torn their ACL or after they've had issues happening. We seen Quiddy, no, it wasn't Quiddy Pay. It was the other guy from Michigan this past year that went to the Ravens. He tore his um, Achilles and ended up getting drafted. Jeffrey Simmons for the Tennessee Titans, the defensive tackle, tore his, and he's become one of the better defensive linemen. I think that Nolan Smith is going to come back stronger than ever. He tore his halfway through the season, so he should be back and ready to go by the start of the season, but we'll have to wait and see. I think his talent is really good, and I think that they would get a steal with him here if they can. And I think that the reason why they would choose him here is to have that fifth year option. If you feel like he is, that good of a player, and granted you might miss 1 or 2 games without him, but what's 1 or 2 games compared to 5 years with him? And picking him in the first round rather than the second is being able to have that fifth year option. I feel like that's the reason why they choose Nolan Smith here. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to the Los Angeles Chargers right here. I feel like, like I said, every year there's been talent that has dropped in the draft. It's not just wide receiver. It's just talent everywhere has dropped in the draft. I mean, we've seen Nakobe Dean go in the 3rd round, and he is one of the most talented linebackers that we've seen in this past draft. And the fact that he fell to the 3rd round before the Eagles got him was very, very shocking. But Jackson Smith going to the Chargers, giving them final stability at the position with Mike Williams constantly getting injured, Keenan Allen constantly getting injured, and having a consistent weapon for Justin Herbert. That is a great choice for them. The Ravens, they obviously need to choose wide receiver here, but at this point in time, I don't think that they value any of the wide receivers as first-round talents. So they're probably going to take their chance to pick somebody in the 2nd round, like a Zay Flowers, maybe an Xavier Hutchinson, maybe even a Parker Washington in the 2nd round for them. With Calais Campbell, retiring and possibly this being his last season, I think that they're going to need more edge rushers. Isaiah Foskey would be a great pick out of Notre Dame for them here. And going now to the Vikings, you've seen that Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen's getting up there in age. He's 32 years old. You're going to need another talented weapon. They did get Hawkinson, granted, but there's a lot of teams that like to run 2 tight ends and, have that talent to split out wide. I think that Michael Mayer is such a talented tight end and a talent at his position that this would be a fantastic pickup for the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, you talk to any Vikings fan, they'll say that they need defense more than anything, but you also need to get weapons opposite of Justin Jefferson and just be able to spread the ball out more, because I feel like Kirk towards the end of the season was trying to force it to Justin Jefferson way too much. The Jacksonville Jaguars, a lot of Jags fans are pissed because they saw my Jags mock draft that I did, and I posted on TikTok where I had them choosing a defensive back to start with, and they're like, well, we need O-line and receivers. No, you got Calvin Ridley coming in. Your O-line did just fine. Your secondary was getting decimated by the Kansas City Chiefs and by the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that your linebacker core and your defensive line held it together. Clark Phillips is an up-and-coming guy from Utah that is getting a lot of praise now and has been quickly sneaking into the first round of a lot of people's mock drafts. I think that Clark Phillips will be a good pickup here. And then all they need to do is worry about trying to get a safety for that secondary. Josh Downs, obviously, with all of the wide receiver talent taken at the top of the draft, I think that Josh Downs going to the Giants is a good choice here. Obviously, like I said before, getting that fifth year option is going to be great. Now, it really just depends on what Brian Daboll and the Giants think. I think that Josh Downs has really good hands, great contested catch ability, and everything that you're looking for. And he's not a slow guy by any means, but if they value Jalen Hyatt, I could see them taking him right here because of his speed and his ability. He did win the award for the best wide receiver in college football this year. So it's very interesting to see. And then I got Anton Harrison going to the Dallas Cowboys. We obviously saw that Tyron Smith is up and down, getting injured constantly, and they had to go out and sign Jason Peters because of him getting injured. So I think that Anton Harrison gives them a cushion at their offensive tackle position to be able to figure out who is going to solidify that position for the next few years. Derek, your thoughts on these next few picks?
Nolan Smith is a good one there for the Seahawks. Kind of surprising that you double dip on edge rush for the Seattle Seahawks. So very interesting strat there. I'll just say this. If the Chargers are lucky enough to get Jackson Smith and Jigba in there at 21, they win the whole draft. They are lucky if they were to get that.
If this actually happens, Derek, what's your thoughts? Like, if this actually happens,
I'm like, life. Oh, they're easy AFC championship game next year. Easy. No question in my mind. Anyways, Foskey for Notre Dame is a good one there with Baltimore. I agree with you on that. They are getting older at the edge position, so they need to try to find somebody to fill in right there. That's a good one. Michael Mayer is a very interesting one. I believe Michael Mayer is a first round draft pick. Do believe that. Don't know if I would go with tight end though, because they have TJ Hawkinson now. But I agree he's first round draft pick, but I don't know how I feel about him going to Minnesota specifically.
Running a double tight end set isn't a bad thing. And then not only that, just like I said, with Thielen getting older, he's 32 years old. He doesn't have much left in the tank. And, with him on the board at this position, it's kind of hard to pass up on him. Now, it really just depends on what Kevin O'Connell wants to do offensively, but I do think that getting another weapon in there for Kirk is going to be a good idea, even though I do know that they need defense badly, but, you can't pass up a talent like that.
Yeah, they need defense badly. Clark Phillips, definitely a good one. Like you said, there are very few corners and secondary guys coming out of Utah now that don't make really good NFL players right now. So absolutely a good pick there. So I like what you've got here through this set. I really like this.
Thoughts on Josh Downs and Anton Harrison?
Yeah, Josh Downs is a good one. And it's obvious what the Giants need to do, right? They need to go get wide receiver. Josh Downs is a good one. Anton Harrison, I don't know that one. I just don't know a lot of the Cowboys needs right now. We'll see more of that once we get into free agency. But other than that, I like where this is going.
And to round out the draft, obviously, Alex, you see that the Steelers are down here at 32, with the Dolphins forfeiting their first round pick because of the tampering period that they had last year. There's really only realistically 31 picks. But the draft machine that I did would not let me save it and move on unless I picked that 32nd pick. So that'll just be their pick for the second round. So starting at the top, I've got the Bills choosing the best running back in the draft in Bijan Robinson, and probably the best running back prospect that we've seen since Saquon Barkley. This guy can do it all. He can catch out of the backfield. He's an explosive guy. He's agile. He's quick. He can make shifty decisions. He can make people miss. He can do it all at the running back position, and that is exactly what the Buffalo Bills are needing. When your leading rusher is your quarterback, that is a bad thing. We need to make sure that we keep Josh Allen upright. We need to keep him healthy. We need to make sure that he's not throwing the ball 30, 40, 50 times per game to try to make you guys win. And I do think that the Bills need offensive line and they need a star-studded running back. So I think that Bijan Robinson's a great pickup for here. And I think that he could be what they need to push them in that AFC Championship Super Bowl window and area that they need right here. They are missing a star-studded running back. And I think that, if their GM is smart, this would be the best pick for them at their current position, because I don't think that anybody else is valuing Bijan Robinson and taking him in the first round. If he falls to Buffalo, they need to jump on him right away. DeJuan Jones going to the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, we've seen what happened. They lost Lyle Collins. They lost Alex Kappa. They lost a couple offensive linemen this year. I think picking DeJuan Jones is probably the safest move for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that way they've got depth on their offensive line. And who knows, maybe he could be a starter replacing one of the guys that you got, and then they could be the backup person that they need. So it really just depends, but I think DeJuan Jones is probably a smart choice here because the Bengals don't really have very many holes, and I do know that they need offensive line to be able to move on next year. Trenton Simpson is probably the only linebacker other than Will Anderson, who is a linebacker, but he's classified as an edge rusher, that I could really see going in the first round. Trenton Simpson is probably the most talented linebacker in this draft class that we've got. And realistically, you know, he's that guy that the Broncos would need in that defense that's already talented enough to be able to, you know, put that defense over the edge. And whoever comes in to coach needs to bring a good defensive coordinator or even leave the guy that they got has done a pretty good job that can get the best out of Trenton Simpson. I think that he's pretty good. Now, Keely Ringo has gotten a lot of flack. He's gotten roasted by a lot of corners, including Marvin Harrison and a couple others in the national championship game. I do think that he's a product, but I think Steve Spagnuolo is going to value a secondary person. He's going to value having a corner for the Kansas City Chiefs and somebody to work with in that secondary, pairing alongside Trent McDuffie. And they got Justin Reed as the safety this offseason, signed him to a 3-year contract, so he's locked away in that safety position. I think Keely Ringo would be a great pickup for the Chiefs right here. And then you go over to the Philadelphia Eagles, Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to move on from Miles Sanders. They really are. Not many holes on this roster. I know that they've been trying to trade for talented running backs. They were in the mix for Christian McCaffrey this year. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the only other running back I could see going in the first round, and I do know that they want a talented rusher. I could see Jahmyr Gibbs going there. And since this wouldn't let me move on without picking, I could see the Steelers choosing Drew Sanders, linebacker out of Arkansas. They're going to move on from Devin Bush this offseason from everything that I'm hearing, and they're going to need another linebacker to fill the void. I think Drew Sanders would be a great pick for them. And Derek, your thoughts on these last 6 picks for the draft that I've gotten?
Bijan Robinson to Buffalo is an insanely beautiful pick. That makes a ton of freaking sense. Bijan Robinson, clearly the best running back in college football. And to add that to that star-studded offense already, he's going to fit right in. DeJuan Jones, that one interests me because I don't know if I quite put DeJuan Jones as a first-round draft pick. I don't know if I go that far, but I will say this. If you're looking for a guy with measurables, DeJuan Jones has the longest arm span of any NFL player ever coming into this year. He has the longest wingspan of anyone that has ever been measured, Chase. I mean, that is insane, the length and the size that he is. So, I mean, if somebody wants to take a chance on him being that early, be my guest. Trenton Simpson, I agree with you there. The linebacker, or they could also go offensive line there one way or another. Keely Ringo, that's a good one for the Kansas City Chiefs. A fast corner with a lot of experience. That's a good one for Kansas City. I don't know how I feel about Jahmyr Gibbs. You know, I don't know how I feel about him going to Philly. You know, I will say this. It's hard for me, though, because I don't really know a lot of the weaknesses of the Philadelphia Eagles right now. They really don't have a lot of weaknesses, right? Like, their offensive line's really good. Their quarterback's elite. Their receivers are elite. Their running back's really good. Their defense is elite from top to bottom. I mean, it doesn't really seem like they have a problem. So, it'll be
I would say
interesting.
that their offensive line and their running game is their weakness because, like I said, their offensive line is getting that much older, and I do know that they're going to be
Is it
valuing.
really though?
Yes, yes, it is.
They've
It
been
really.
averaging 160 yards per game in the playoffs, Chase.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is that with their offensive line getting older, there's a lot of guys that are going to be retiring, new guys going to be stepping in, but they don't value Miles Sanders like they did before. I mean, they were trying to trade for Kareem Hunt, trade for Christian McCaffrey, trade for a more talented runner than Miles Sanders. And I know that the Eagles have been talking about wanting to get a talented star rusher for a while. And I think that, Jahmyr Gibbs is that guy that they're going to be looking for. And, what better person than to pair him with an Alabama alum in Jalen Hurts. And I do think that offensive line, which is who I had them picking earlier, and a running back is their two weakest positions that they got. And I got them covering both of them. So,
I mean, I could see. Here's the thing. I mean, obviously, for the Eagles, you don't have a glaring weakness anywhere, so you can just play with house money. And if you want to just say, "Oh, well, Miles Sanders is a good running back," if you just want to get a quality piece there, then they could do that. Or I think the Eagles, because I think the Eagles may end up going with offensive line help, because that was an issue with them early in the year again. And like you said, some of their offensive linemen are getting older, and some of these guys are not going to be around for a while. So they might want to. I would say this: if Osiris Torrance is not taken at 19 like you originally had, and he's still there, then I could see them doing that. I could see them doing that to get him to replace Jason Kelsey at some point. But like you said, it's a household pick. You really don't need him, but can't really hurt to have him, right? So, yeah, I mean, I like that set.
All right, and then there you go. That is my mock draft 1.0. Tune in tomorrow where Derek goes over his mock draft 1.0 and discusses the guys that he has at all of the positions, and we'll see the reasons why he picked them where he picked them at. So it's going to be very interesting to see the differences that we have at each position and to figure out where these guys are actually going to go. But granted, like I said, this is 1.0 for us. We're still going to watch the combine, still going to watch the pro days, and we're going to do multiple drafts leading up to it. We'll probably do a 4.0 and a 5.0 by the time the draft hits to solidify the final picks that we believe that are going to be picked. So tune in. Stay tuned for any further episodes. Thank you all for tuning in, watching the Chasing Larger Sports Stories podcast. This is Derek and Chase signing off.